off again. I shouldn't be surprised. Bob Monkhouse.
Thank you for having me. For those who haven't had me yet, please be patient. It's so wonderful to be back in Blackpool again. You know, you hear such wonderful conversations here in Blackpool. But Henry, that isn't our baby. Shut up, it's a better prom. I saw a woman walking along the front with a live duck under her arm, and this drunk saw her. He said, "What are you doing with that pig?" And she said, "It isn't a pig, it's a duck." He said, "I'm talking to the duck." You meet the average Englishman here in Blackpool. You know what the average Englishman is, don't you? He's a fellow who drives home from seeing a Swedish film in his German car and sits on his Norwegian furniture and eats some New Zealand bacon with a little Dutch cheese and some Danish butter, and then he draws some nice French wine out of a bottle, drinks it from a Venetian glass, then switches on his Japanese transistor, hears one American record, and instantly picks up his Hong Kong ballpoint and writes to his MP demanding that they stop the flow of gold out of this country. I went to London to see the financial crisis. I didn't know whether to go to Buckingham Palace and see the changing of the guard or go to the Bank of England and see the guarding of the change. But a lot's happened to me since I was here in Blackpool. I appeared before the President of the United States. Well, he said he was the President of the United States. Actually, what he said was, if you're a comedian, then I'm the President of... I went to Wembley yesterday. Wasn't that exciting, Wembley? I was sitting among the West Germans. Every time they scored, all the West Germans shouted, "Ooh, vey, ooh, vey, ooh, vey." Except I was sitting next to an Israel supporter. He was going, "Oy, vey, oy, vey." Everyone, Jimmy Edwards was there. So he's having trouble growing his moustache back, but I think it's awfully nice. George Woodcock has sent him some cuttings from his eyebrows. Then, what else did I do? Oh, wait, I went to see a film. I must tell you this. Have you got a minute? Because I want to tell you about the spy film. Because they're all spy films. They're really cashing in on this spy craze because they've just made a biblical film and Adam is known as 001. And this is the best. This was James Bond. He's good. And I've read all the Bond books, and they show that James Bond's father isn't really his father at all. His real father is his father's brother, which, if you figure it out, makes James Bond the man from U.N.C.L.E. And this film was good. Can I tell you about the film? Because it got it all in my head. Because my favorite was in it, Sean Connery. He's my favorite. And he plays James Bond. And the first scene, he's going in to see his boss, and you can tell how friendly he is with him because he calls him M. And his full name is Emma. And M says to Sean, he says, "Oh, you've got to take this health cure. You've got to go to this health farm in Wales because lately you've got all of a doodah." And Sean says, "Well, I haven't got all of a doodah. I may have got a little doodah." And he has. He's got this little doodah which he swallows, and it sends out radio signals, and it goes bleep, bleep, and they know wherever he is. They know where he is because it goes bleep, bleep. In his last picture, he bleeps all over Europe. I think it's something in the water. I don't drink it. And because of this, he's got to go to this health farm, see, in the film. And M shows him this car. He's got this marvelous car. He says, "Look at this." He says, "It's got machine guns in the headlights, and it has a bulletproof screen, and it lets out oil from the exhaust, and it has blades on the wheels, and it has this button, and when you press in the button, whoever's sitting beside you goes straight through the roof, ejector seat, because you just press the button and straight through the roof." And they get in the car, and Sean says, "Where to?" And M says, "Press that in." And he does, and you should see him. He looks like L. And then Sean gets to this health farm, and this nurse, I wish you could have, she looked like a chest of drawers with the top drawer pulled up. She's great, and he liked her, I could tell, and he's my favorite. And he looked at her, and he took down her name and address, a dress she happened to be wearing, and he took his clothes up, and he's big, and he's hairy, and everything, and he's my favorite. And has these muscles. He's got muscles in places where I haven't even got places. And she straps him on this thing for stretching your backbone, and she goes away and she leaves him, and it's boom, 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 boom. And suddenly he feels something, and then he's lying there nude, and he feels this chilly touch where he least expected, and he thinks, oh, cold finger, and it is, it's his enemies come in. It's a man with one eye called Blofeld. I forget the name of his other eye, but anyway, and he turns it up full, this thing, and it stretches Sean's backbone, you know, and the enemy says, so long, and but he gets off because Sean can do that, and he escapes, and he chases the enemy, and he sees the enemy all naked and goose-pimply, and he's going into the steam bath, and Sean thinks, the spy who came in from the cold, because he's very quick, and he follows him in, and this fella sits in this steam bath like a big washing machine, and Sean sneaks up and he turns it on full, and you should see the enemy because he's boiling, you know, he only went in for a service and he comes out with a hot point, and then Sean realizes, he says, this man belongs to the worst and the most evil, filthy band in the world, which thrilled me because I didn't know Bob Sharples was in the film, and he says, because he fights against the forces of evil, Sean. He's my favorite. He fights them. He fights Spectre and Smersh and the Prices and Incomes Board. And he says, this man belongs to CRUMPET. Trumpet, that is. Now that's the club for revenge and unmitigated menace and ping pong every Tuesday. And he says, I swear to get Crumpet, which is no surprise. He's been doing it for about 4 films. And he goes off to Miami, and he meets Shirley Eaton. Did I tell you about her? Oh, she's marvelous. She looked in a T-shirt. It's T for 2 and 2 for T. With 2 lumps, and he makes a date with her. And he goes up to her room to show her his snorkel, and she's lying there, and she's been painted. It's awful. She's painted all over with gold varnish. And he says, how do you feel? And she says, guilty, and dies. But she has a lovely finish. And then he goes to bed. Sean goes to bed in his bare chest, and he wakes up, and there's this big tarantula on his bosom. And he just laughs. He goes, oh, you're marvelous. He's my favorite. And he kills the tarantula by clenching the hairs on his chest. Like that. And he has Luciana Paluzzi in this picture, and he has Ursula Andress, and he has 10 beautiful girls, and he has Pussy galore, and she's good. You like her? You following the plot? She's on a black man. He's a big unwashed coal heaver, and she comes at him with this helicopter. You know, she dives at Sean, and she's trying to kill him. But he shoots at the helicopter, and she falls out into this haystack, and he dives into the same haystack by helicopter. And wow. Yes, she got the dead needle in this haystack, and he goes off to the South Seas. And he faces the villain, and they throw him in this swimming pool that's full of sharks. It's infested with sharks. You know, there's 6 theatrical agents there and a couple of boxing promoters there. And he escapes, and he sees something on the floor, and he thinks, odd job. And he picks it up, and there's this bowler hat, and it has the plans, these diabolical plans for killing all the housewives in England by poisoning the glue on the back of our trading stamps. And then, when you think it's over, in comes Rosa Klebb, and she's ugly, she's horrible, she's very ugly, and she works for CRUMB, that's Crumb. That's a terrible organization. CRUMB, it stands for the Criminal Regime for Undressing on Morecambe Beach. And she kicks at him with these little spikes on her foot where she forgot to cut her toenails. She kicks, and he steps aside, and he jumps, and she kicks, and he steps aside and jump, and they go, kick, step aside, jump, kick, step aside, jump. And he pulls up a mask and says, I know you, you're Lionel Blair. And it is. And they have a little waltz, and the picture ends nicely because he rounds up all the villains, and Dr. No is blown up, and Thunderball is harpooned, and Goldfinger is sucked through the window of this plane, and M phones him and says, you can come home. And Sean just laughs. He goes, you're great, he's my favorite. And he says, tonight I've got a date with a blonde Russian spy. And he does, and he goes off with Ilya Kuryakin. Spoiled the whole picture for me. just before I go, I thought perhaps I could give you a tip about the big World Championship fight this coming Saturday. See, I happened to go to a party and I saw Cassius Clay. I knew it was Cassius Clay because he was saying,
I feel pretty, oh so pretty. I feel pretty and witty and gay.
and I said, well, you've got the big fight coming up, Cassius. How many rounds will it take you to win? And he said,
1, 2, 3.
Then I saw Brian London over in the corner, and I said, Brian, you heard what he said, you know. What makes you so confident that you're going to win? And he said,
London Pride.
I said, oh, yeah. But they say you can't hurt Cassius if you hit him in the head, the chest, the stomach, or the kidneys. Where are you going to punch him so he'll really hurt? And he said, Ladies and gentlemen, he just can't win. I know. I didn't mean it, Brian. The next world champion has just given us a natural break, friends.